Uslop Web Radio, la voce dell'avvocatura.
Ci siamo? Possiamo partire? Bene, intanto grazie ai presenti, poi immagino che ne affluiranno altri. La presentazione del programma poi ovviamente spetterà al consigliere Enrico Merli. Io innanzitutto voglio ringraziare Enrico e tutti quelli che lavorano e lavoreranno all'osservatorio, perché l'osservatorio, che peraltro è previsto dalla legge professionale, è qualcosa di importante, perché è proprio un nuovo organismo previsto dalla nostra legge e ha una mission molto ambiziosa per quel che riguarda la giurisdizione, e quella effettivamente di proporre, e sarebbe, oserei dire, senza tema di smentita, davvero un qualcosa di epocale, un'idea di strutturazione della giurisdizione dell'avvocatura, che però ovviamente nell'osservatorio poi si serve di tante altre forze esterne all'avvocatura, perché poi se noi ci pensiamo, in effetti tutte le riforme intorno alla giurisdizione, alla geografia giudiziaria vengono fatte normalmente a spot. Viene fatto e disfatto da un governo che segue l'altro. Normalmente quello che ha fatto un governo va disfatto per principio, non va bene per principio, e quindi manca un filo conduttore. Quello che però dobbiamo anche dire, perché dobbiamo essere in grado di valutare le nostre criticità e i nostri limiti, quali si sono manifestati finora in modo da superarli, è che anche l'avvocatura non è riuscita finora a concretizzare, a costruire un progetto condiviso. Il motivo è anche abbastanza semplice, perché poi effettivamente quando si va a attuare delle idee di rivisitazione della geografia giudiziaria emergono sicuramente le peculiarità territoriali, no? Quindi è difficile convincere qualcuno a rinunciare alle proprie peculiarità. Questo chiaramente è la grande sfida di maturità per l'avvocatura. Ma l'altro punto, dove invece siamo molto maturati, che tutti siamo consapevoli del fatto che quando noi andiamo a comunque criticare una soluzione, dobbiamo imparare, l'abbiamo imparato e lo stiamo attuando, e l'osservatorio è pilota in tutto questo, a proporre l'alternativa. Perché troppo spesso in passato l'avvocatura si è limitata a dire no, così non va bene. Così non va bene per questo territorio, va bene per quest'altro territorio, però l'alternativa in genere è sempre stata un'alternativa conservatrice. Lasciamo così le cose come stanno, dando in questa maniera, in qualche maniera, campo aperto, campo facile alla politica, perché poi la politica dice va bene, ma se anche voi avvocatura non riuscite a trovare al vostro interno una soluzione alternativa, se non ci riuscite voi, allora ci pensiamo noi politica. Voi capite quanto sarebbe forte quindi un progetto strutturato della avvocatura, e l'osservatorio non ha solo l'avvocatura, perché ha dentro anche la magistratura, ha dentro tante altre componenti importanti, quindi sarebbe un progetto davvero difficile da non prendere in serissima considerazione da parte della politica, anche perché sarebbe un progetto che toglierebbe molti problemi alla politica stessa di conflittualità territoriale. E allora questo evento di oggi, che tocca un tema comparatistico, è davvero centrale in questo progetto, perché anche qui tante volte la politica parla di Europa a vanvera. Io direi che 9 volte su 10 ne parla a vanvera. La 10ª non ne parla, e quindi per quel motivo non ne parla a vanvera, però generalmente si richiama l'Europa quando serve, come serve, viene interpretata in maniera parziale. E invece, se poi noi andiamo davvero a verificare su tanti temi, dalla geografia al discorso delle tariffe, della configurazione del ruolo dell'avvocato imprenditoriale piuttosto che no, sull'idea della concorrenza all'interno delle professioni, l'Europa non dice assolutamente quello che tante volte si dà per scontato da parte della politica che venga detto. E quindi l'evento comparatistico è segno di grande maturità, e poi è davvero un passaggio fondamentale in questo progetto molto ambizioso. Quindi io chiudo augurandovi buon lavoro, ma davvero devo spendere, e chiudo, 2 parole per Enrico Merli, perché il compito che le è stato assegnato di guidare l'osservatorio è probabilmente il compito più complicato all'interno di questa consigliatura. È più facile fare il presidente del CNF che coordinare o presiedere l'osservatorio. Per questi obiettivi così importanti, e perché è molto difficile poi far lavorare, coordinare, coalizzare tante forze e culture diverse intorno al progetto. Enrico sta lavorando in maniera straordinaria, poi i meriti naturalmente li raccoglie il Presidente del Consiglio Nazionale Forense, quindi sono molto interessato che i progetti dell'osservatorio vadano in porto, e con lui stanno lavorando in maniera straordinaria tutte le forze che lo affiancano. Quindi io vi auguro buon lavoro. Credo che noi ci siamo maturi per fare qualcosa di grandioso, che è un progetto dell'avvocatura sulla giurisdizione, e se ci pensate davvero segneremo nel nostro piccolo e all'interno della storia della giurisdizione un momento epocale, potremmo dire noi c'eravamo. Quindi grazie e buon lavoro a tutti, e passo la parola a Enrico. Ascolto te, se introduci.
Eccolo. Buongiorno a tutti. Salto a pie pari l'imbarazzo che mi hanno creato i complimenti del Presidente, e desidero solo, visto che abbiamo necessariamente perso un pochettino di tempo, dire due cose. Primo, se l'osservatorio sta procedendo è perché dalle adesioni all'osservatorio si è passati alla partecipazione e alla condivisione degli obiettivi dell'osservatorio da parte degli aderenti stessi. L'osservatorio non è una fucina delle riflessioni dell'avvocatura, ma è un centro culturale nel quale confluiscono diverse culture. Con noi hanno collaborato e collaborano l'Istituto Nazionale di Statistica, oggi abbiamo la graditissima presenza dell'Associazione Bancaria Italiana, abbiamo il concorso della università con la Ca' Foscari di Venezia, che ha anche costituito un comitato scientifico che ci assiste nello sviluppo delle idee, un comitato scientifico nel quale non ci sono giuristi. Abbiamo anche uno scambio molto vivace con stagisti che vengono a passare un periodo qui da noi e che si occupano dal loro punto di vista delle problematiche della giustizia. Il loro punto di vista può essere quello dello statistico, come è capitato nell'ultima occasione, o quello dell'economista. Ed è tutto un arricchimento per noi che non rappresenta un primo passo verso un ampliamento dei confini e delle vedute di un'avvocatura che vuole comprendere come comportarsi ed atteggiarsi nella società nella quale viviamo. L'evento di oggi, di carattere internazionale, ha alcuni protagonisti che desidero ringraziare, in primis il Dipartimento IRSIG del Consiglio Nazionale delle Ricerche. Senza la loro spinta propulsiva e senza la loro articolazione di idee, oggi questo evento non si sarebbe potuto realizzare. Quindi ringrazio il direttore, il dottor Marco Fabri, e il dottor Davide Carnevali, che è un assiduo frequentatore delle nostre riunioni. Se viene spesso vuol dire che tutto sommato non si annoia e ci sono delle cose a cui pensare di interessante. Desidero poi ringraziare, prima di lasciare la parola al primo di loro, i relatori che ci hanno fatto la cortesia di essere presenti oggi e ci hanno fatto anche la cortesia di attendere per questa ora in cui abbiamo cercato di avere una sala un pochettino meno spoglia dei primi momenti. Sono presenti la dottoressa Gerde Eva Dal Sinding, se non ho pronunciato male, che è un giudice della Corte distrettuale di Glostrup in Danimarca. Il dottor Robert van der Laan, che è un consulente esecutivo per strategia e sviluppo del Consiglio Superiore della Magistratura dei Paesi Bassi. La dottoressa Patricia Branco, che è una ricercatrice del Centro Studi Sociali dell'Università di Coimbra, in Portogallo. Il dottor Gilles Accomandò, giudice primo presidente della Corte d'Appello di Po, dove fa sicuramente un po' meno caldo che dalle altre parti. E da ultimo, ma non ho scelto di metterla per ultima, la dottoressa Isabelle Dupré, consulente strategico sulle riforme del Consiglio delle Corti e dei Tribunali del Belgio. L'idea del convegno odierno mi pare che sia in sé una vasta partecipazione internazionale, una serie di relazioni da parte di protagonisti dello studio dell'assetto territoriale della giurisdizione nei rispettivi paesi, protagonisti dall'interno e non da spettatori. Io con questo vi ringrazio ancora una volta e passo la parola a Marco Fabri, il direttore dell'IRSI, come dicevo, il primo, questo dipartimento protagonista dell'odierno convegno, che consente all'osservatorio di, come diceva il Presidente, di pensare, se le idee e le forze ci sosterranno, di poter concretamente sviluppare quell'idea che è al centro del nostro programma di lavoro 2017, che si è realizzato, costituirebbe un primo tassello di un disegno più ampio e, a mio avviso, estremamente interessante per provare a disegnare un nuovo perimetro e un nuovo contenuto dell'assetto giurisdizionale nel nostro Paese, non dimenticando un obiettivo finale, secondo me il più importante, che gli assetti nazionali sono importanti, ma se non si guarda all'Europa non avremo mai la possibilità di comprendere quale potrebbe essere, in termini più seri e coerenti, l'assetto di un sistema giustizia che serva quelli che io mi auguro nasceranno gli Stati Uniti d'Europa e non le singole comunità dell'Europa medesima. Grazie.
Ringrazio l'avvocato Merli, come ha detto mi chiamo Marco Fabri e da oltre 25 anni lavoro presso l'Istituto di ricerca sui sistemi giudiziari del Consiglio nazionale delle ricerche. Qualcuno di voi, visto che sono prevalentemente, immagino, avvocati presenti, l'Istituto è stato fondato nel 1992 dal professor Giuseppe Di Federico, che è ordinario adesso emerito dell'Università di Bologna, e da sempre l'Istituto si caratterizza per studi di organizzazione giudiziaria con un taglio comparato. Siamo 6 ricercatori a tempo pieno, 5 ricercatori, diciamo così, a tempo parziale, i famosi, purtroppo tristemente precari, giovani precari, e poi abbiamo una forte relazione con l'Università di Bologna, in particolare, dove abbiamo 7 professori associati che periodicamente sulle attività di ricerca ci danno una mano, oltre ovviamente a tecnici amministrativi. Direi orgogliosamente, in questi 25 anni siamo diventati, forse lo siamo sempre stati, il più grande istituto in Europa che si occupa di studi sull'organizzazione giudiziaria con un taglio interdisciplinare e non solamente giuridico. Ed è anche per questo che abbiamo sviluppato una buona rete a livello internazionale e soprattutto abbiamo maturato negli ultimi anni forti relazioni col Consiglio d'Europa e con quello che è diventato, certe volte a ragione, certe volte non proprio a ragione, probabilmente l'organismo internazionale più importante per quanto riguarda la raccolta dati e la diffusione di dati sui sistemi giudiziari europei, che è la Commissione per l'efficienza della giustizia del Consiglio d'Europa. Come ho detto, l'avvocato Merli, l'Istituto fin da subito ha abbracciato con grande, diciamo così, entusiasmo la nascita dell'osservatorio permanente del Consiglio nazionale forense. Infatti, se non erro, 3 o 4 ricercatori fanno parte di varie commissioni di lavoro, perché nonostante il fatto che noi ci reputiamo un istituto che ha le radici in Italia ovviamente, ma che di fatto si occupa di studi a livello comparato ed europeo, come sempre l'utopia è quella di creare conoscenze per cercare di migliorare ovviamente anche l'amministrazione della giustizia del nostro Paese. Devo dire che negli ultimi 20 anni, qualcuno di voi ha anche i capelli bianchi ormai come i miei, tutto sommato mi sembra che alcune cose siano cambiate per il meglio. Certamente alcuni temi che non erano mai stati affrontati a livello italiano sono arrivati anche sull'agenda politica. Quindi sono molto soddisfatto e molto contento della relazione che si è instaurata con l'osservatorio, perché ritengo che tutte le volte che c'è la volontà di conoscere, ovviamente un istituto di ricerca debba cercare di proporre quelle che sono le sue iniziative e le sue idee. La giornata di oggi è stata organizzata appunto in collaborazione con l'Osservatorio, il Consiglio nazionale forense, in particolare l'avvocato Merli, e l'idea è sempre la stessa, nel senso che riteniamo sia sempre opportuno cercare di conoscere quello che fanno gli altri per stimolare sostanzialmente anche un po' di creatività e di idee diverse rispetto a quello che ogni tanto, anche se l'Italia è un grande paese, può essere un atteggiamento un po' chiuso, un po' parrocchiale. Quindi abbiamo individuato 5 paesi che in momenti diversi, anche con caratteristiche molto diverse per dimensione e cultura giuridica, hanno affrontato il tema che adesso sta tagliando comunque trasversalmente tutta l'Europa, ma anche altri paesi, il tema della geografia giudiziaria, e quindi verranno presentate, come abbiamo detto, relazioni o casi di studio che riguardano la Danimarca, il Belgio, la Francia, il paese tendenzialmente più vicino a noi come cultura e struttura anche, ed anche l'Olanda. Come avrete visto dal programma e come caratteristica tipica almeno del nostro istituto, i relatori, ovviamente poi ci sono anche contatti personali, però i relatori sono e hanno provenienze, formazione ed esperienze diverse, e questo per noi è sempre un plus, nel senso che riteniamo sempre di più che attraverso il confronto fra esperienze, culture e anche competenze, certe volte molto diverse, quindi dagli avvocati, ai magistrati, i ricercatori, consulenti, ci mancherebbe, che possono dare il loro contributo, si possa creare quella fertilità di un terreno che possa poi effettivamente proporre soluzioni certe volte un pochino, ribadisco, un pochino diverse, un pochino più creative rispetto a quello che è stato fatto fino adesso. L'organizzazione della giornata, come vedete, è divisa in 2 gruppi. La prima parte della mattinata è dedicata appunto alle relazioni. Noi abbiamo chiesto ai relatori, vedremo se ne saranno capaci, di concentrarsi prevalentemente sugli aspetti di disegno della riforma, di implementazione della riforma laddove è già stata fatta, e soprattutto un tema mancante sistematicamente non solamente in Italia ma in tutti i giudiziari, in buona misura anche in vari settori della pubblica amministrazione, sulla valutazione delle riforme, valutazione che non è necessariamente solamente alla fine ma può essere fatta ex ante, in itinere o ex post. Quindi se questi paesi comunque si sono posti il problema del monitoraggio e anche della valutazione delle riforme che hanno portato avanti in materia ovviamente di geografia giudiziaria. Il pomeriggio invece è stato pensato con l'avvocato Merli l'osservatorio per un dibattito più ovviamente nazionale, che possa eventualmente anche tenere conto, ci auguriamo, degli stimoli che sono venuti, che arriveranno, mi auguro, dai nostri relatori della mattinata. Anch'io devo fare, permettetemi, qualche ringraziamento molto rapido. Ovviamente il ringraziamento principale al Consiglio nazionale forense e all'osservatorio, lo devo leggere perché è sempre lunghissimo, ieri tradurlo in inglese era praticamente impossibile. Osservatorio nazionale permanente sugli esercizi della giurisdizione, devo dire da civil servant, da pubblico dipendente, purtroppo devo dire, nel senso che per fortuna c'è stato il Consiglio nazionale forense a dare una mano dal punto di vista organizzativo, anche molto generoso, perché noi ormai abbiamo i soldi che incassiamo dall'Europa ma non siamo in grado di spenderli, quindi praticamente abbiamo sistematicamente dei residui, perché è difficilissimo riuscire ad organizzare ormai alcunché rispetto alle regole estremamente stringenti e pazzesche che ormai la pubblica amministrazione è costretta a sottostare, quindi ringraziamo moltissimo l'Avvocato Merli per la disponibilità e anche la generosità di aver organizzato un evento come questo, e penso che anche i nostri ospiti stranieri abbiano apprezzato moltissimo la modalità con la quale è stato organizzato. Devo ringraziare ovviamente gli speaker, i nostri invitati che hanno accettato di buon grado di venire, alcuni li conoscevo già da anni, altri invece li ho conosciuti più recentemente e altri ho avuto la piacevolezza di conoscerli ieri sera perché ovviamente ha funzionato un po' il passaparola, i partecipanti ovviamente che sono qua oggi e da ultimo ma non per ultimo il mio collega Davide Carnevali che con l'Avvocato Merli ha organizzato di fatto insieme ai suoi collaboratori di cui non ricordo ovviamente i nomi, ma ha organizzato questo evento e comunque è stato in ogni caso un lavoro importante che si spera ovviamente non finisca qua, nel senso che questa è una tappa rispetto ad una serie di iniziative che speriamo si possano portare avanti anche nei prossimi mesi. Quindi seguiremo l'ordine dei relatori, abbiamo pensato anche per stimolare un pochino di più il dibattito di avere se possibile qualche domanda immediatamente dopo la partecipazione alla relazione dei singoli relatori, eventualmente si spera in fondo alla mattinata, se arriviamo un po' corti possiamo certamente aprire il dibattito avendo la possibilità e la disponibilità in maniera assolutamente informale dei relatori che rimarranno, fra l'altro l'ho chiesto ieri sera loro anche nel pomeriggio per seguire anche il dibattito che seguirà più italiano. Quindi chiedo alla dottoressa Eva Sinding se può venire per presentarci la sua relazione sulla Danimarca. Eva, if you want to come here, please. La relazione generalmente abbiamo chiesto dovrebbe durare intorno ai 20 minuti in modo tale da permettere un po' di dibattito e successivamente anche alcune ovviamente repliche che potranno poi essere riprese anche al termine della sessione delle 5 relazioni. Vi ringrazio.
Yes, it's working. Press F5. Yes, I think it's okay. Yes, I think everybody can hear me. Usually I would stand up, but I think this is also working quite well. I have no watch, so you have to keep track of the time. Okay, my name is Gert Sinding, or Eva, as is much more simple in Italian, and I'm a judge in the suburbs of Copenhagen. I'm going to speak about something that I spent 6.5 years working on in Denmark with the reform, and I only have those 20 minutes, so forgive me if I get carried away, because I spend a big part of my life with this. See if we can make it change. Just some facts about Denmark. This very small country on top of Germany, part of Scandinavia, with 5.7 million inhabitants and 371 permanent judges and 300 junior judges, young judges, deputy judges that are not permanently appointed yet. And you can see it's a small country. I should also tell you that the prosecution service is not a part of the courts in Denmark. That's separate. So judges are only judging and not doing any sort of prosecutor's work. And I know that's a bit different from France and Italy. So just that was some background facts. And then to the reform and what we wanted to do. Before the reform, we had 82 court districts in Denmark, and some of them were so small that there was only one judge and 10 employees, so they were very vulnerable. If someone got ill, you had to cancel the cases and the court hearings. So the idea was to reduce the number of court districts in order to make the courts less vulnerable. And also to make them able to handle bigger cases. So we had these 82 court districts and 210 judges, and that is not counting all the junior judges. And then we had, because of those small courts, we had the High Court acted as first instance in some cases, some bigger cases, because the smallest district courts were too small to handle big cases. And land registration was part of the work of the district court. That was sort of the, I will go further that, no, I will stay there. But the object of the court reform was also to centralize the land registration and make a digitalization of that. But that was on the side, you could say, because that has nothing really to do with the court districts. That was more a technical reform. After the reform, we reduced the number of court districts to 24. And to do that, we had to appoint some more judges to make all end up in the right way. And but we actually obtained what we wanted, that High Court is not acting as first instance in any criminal case, and only in a very limited number of civil cases. And it is not because the district court cannot handle those civil cases, because they are considered to be able to handle everything, but it is to make it easier for the public, because if the High Court is acting as first instance, you have direct access to the Supreme Court. For other cases, you can only go to the Supreme Court if, with a case, if you have a special permission from the Appeals Commission Board, because then the Supreme Court will be acting as the third instance. So the civil cases that start in the High Court, they are considered to be about matter of principles of very big impact. And after the reform, we also had this centralized land registration that is now handled by one court in Jutland with 100 employees, and it's completely digitalization, and you can do it from home now, the land registration. I have not tried it. Most people hire a lawyer to do it because it's still, or their bank will do it, but you can do it 24 times a day and online from home. So this is just to show the system of the courts in Denmark. You can see we have a one-way system. We don't have administrative courts in Denmark. We can handle everything in one thing. And we have the Supreme Court and the district courts and two courts of appeal, high courts. So everything is very small, but it's working quite well. And then we have some specialized courts that I will not tell you about today. And here you can see what we actually do at the courts and who is doing it. We have, criminal cases with lay judges and without lay judges, jurors, and we have a lot of work with pre-trial decisions in criminal cases, search warrants, detention, and so on. And in the civil causes, we also handle everything, all subjects we can handle, administrative cases and everything. But we have different tracks, of course, for small claims and ordinary claims and family law. And then all the young judges, they handle the bailiffs court, probate court, bankruptcy court, and the notary public, which is a public service in Denmark. And we don't use that much, this system of notaries, but as you do in southern parts of Europe. But if you need the notary public, you go to the court. And the deputy judges will also handle a smaller amount of the other cases because they are supposed to become judges, permanent judges later on, so they need to be educated and and learn to handle the bigger cases. They will learn that little by little. And they will usually work with a senior judge. So I'll come back to the objects of the reform. And as I told you, it was that all criminal cases should be handled by the district courts in the first instance. The Supreme Court in Denmark cannot hear evidence. They are not supposed to consider evidence in criminal cases, and that has always been like that. They can only consider the law. So we had troubles with the Human Rights Court that said, okay, in the serious criminal cases, you actually only have one trial of the evidence. And that was true. So we moved it down, and we all now have all cases. All criminal cases will start in the district court, and there will be, if the people want to bring an appeal, there will be a complete new trial at the Court of Appeal, the High Court. So that is very good, and we can have the small cases with no jurors, the bigger cases with 2 jurors in the district courts and 3 in the High Court, and then the very big cases with 6 jurors in the district courts and 9 jurors in the Court of Appeal. And that is only serious crimes where there is a demand of a prison sentence of more than 4 years. But we can handle that in the district courts now. Another object was, as I told you, that most civil cases should be handled by the district courts. And that was actually thought to be to bring civil law, the handling of civil law cases closer to the public, because it should be handled by the district court. But then, as I told you, the cases that you knew should go to the Supreme Court, there's still an opening that they can be handled by the Court of Appeal as first instance. But it's a very small number of cases that I don't have the exact number, but I know that it's very small. I can say that I'm actually now acting as an appeal court judge, and have been so for the last 2 years on a temporary basis. And I have had only, I think, 3 first instance cases during those 2 years. Then, as I told you, there was this centralization and digitization of land registration. And then, and that's what I also will come back to, there was this idea of having less vulnerable district courts, that it should be more easy to handle illness and holiday planning and all the practical issues, also ICT and everything, because a court of 10 employees was too small to handle everyday life of a court in those days today, and it was also very expensive because of the court buildings and everything that you have to have. So that was also an idea, and that was, of course, an idea that was very directed at the politicians, because that's economy, and that's what they understand, politicians. They like that you can tell them something about the economy of this. And then there was a more internal objective, strengthening of the professional environment in the district court. It is obvious that if you are one single judge in a small town far away from Copenhagen, you only have yourself to discuss your cases with, and you can easily, it can be quite boring if you have been a judge for 20 years. And you have to go and discuss it, go around in the courtroom discussing with yourself. And actually we could also see that it was very difficult to employ deputy judges, those young junior judges. They didn't want to go to those small towns because they wanted to go to a professional environment where they could learn from an experienced colleague and have colleagues and discuss their work with other people, professionals. So they would stay close to the university cities, and it was very difficult for us to attract the candidates that we need within the courts. We only take the best, and that was difficult on the out. You further you got away from the university cities, so that was actually quite a big problem. So, did we obtain what we wanted? I made my personal evaluation. We implemented the reform at once, meaning that we did it from the 1st of January 2007. So it has now been in force for 10 years, and we did it on one day. So from one day, we had one court system on the 31st of December 2006 and another court system on the 1st of January. Luckily, that was a holiday, so we could rest. But on the 2nd of January, I was just like this, especially because of the ICT. Did it work? We had to, rearrange everything and make sure that all the registration of the cases was not in the old courts, but in the news. I'm not going to tell you about how we did it, but it was very complicated, and it didn't work on the 2nd of January, as you can imagine. It was very chaotic, and I was on the phone all the time with people being frustrated and saying, what should we do? And we had made sure that every case we only had very, very important court hearings during the first 2 weeks of 2007. That had been arranged that you should only handle criminal cases that could not wait. So that is detention and search warrants and things like that. So that was one thing. The reason we did it like this is that we have a rule in our constitution saying that we can only do it like this, because judges are not supposed to move from one court to another unless it's decided by law, or if they apply for it, of course. So that was one reason. The other reason is that the court reform in Denmark was made together with a big reform of the municipality. The numbers of municipalities was reduced from 300 to 100 at the same time, and the number of police districts was also reduced, I think, from about 50 to 12. So it was a big reform of all administration in Denmark. There were several other aspects of it that I will not go to. So that was why we did it. But the easy objections, objects, of course, we reach them because that was by law. All criminal cases are now handled by the district courts. Most civil cases are handled also by the district courts, and the centralization also works now. Big starting problems, and there are still some cases that people ask for compensation because it was too slow in the beginning, but today it works really, really good. And people are, especially the lawyers, think that it's wonderful that they can stay at home and do this land registration and work. And that is very important for the economy of Denmark, the strong economy, that this land registration is very effective and working. So, and then there is the more, how should you assess if that worked? Less vulnerable district courts. Did we get it? Yes, we did, because it's easier to handle this holiday planning and everything. But we could also see that the courts getting bigger, the sense of responsibility with our personnel perhaps lowered a bit. So where people, in this small court of 10 persons, people would go to work even though they were ill. And perhaps they knew that they were living in the same town as the court, so they could go to work with a headache and think, okay, if it gets really bad, I can go home. But suddenly they have to drive 50 kilometers to go to work, and they would not go in the morning if they thought, oh, I'm not sure that I can stay on. So we could see that illness grew, and but on the other hand, it was much easier to handle because there were several people who could take over. But it is something that you have to take into consideration, and we did a big work on we talked a lot about being ill and not being ill, and when you should go and when you should not go, and things like that. Then there is also the demands from the politicians. It is easier for a politician to say, I'm sure that you can spare one person when you have already 100, than to say it if you only have 10. So, of course, there has been a demand, an ongoing demand, as I think everyone in Europe knows, that politicians will say, I don't believe you when you say you cannot find a way to make it work more efficiently and to cut down expenses. We all know that. And that is also true for the courts of Denmark. Then there is specialization. That was also an object not only for the judges but also for the clerical staff, that everybody should learn more and be more specialized, be better at their work. And that is good. But it is also very dangerous if the person that you have educated in knowing everything about how to receive a demand for the bailiff's court, and then she leaves. What should you do? Because before, everybody knew about a bit about everything, and you could quickly learn a new person, how to handle it. So it is good, because I think the quality level of our work has grown, but it is also a bit complicated, because the loss is bigger if someone leaves the court. So that is something that, as a court president today, you really have to think ahead and think, okay, do I have a backup for my specialist in this or that field? And I know they all do that, but you have to take that into consideration also. Am I good with time? Good. Then there is this strengthening of the professional environment in the district courts. And I think that concerning that, it depends very much on who you ask. If you ask an elderly judge, he will say it was good as it was before. If you ask a young judge, the person will say it's much better. Because some of the senior judges and those who are close to pension, they really liked working alone, and nobody could tell them what to do. They were the head of their small court with 10 employees, and they were also had a very big social standing in the small town, where they were actually the judge. And people would not say, Mr. Fabri, they would say, hello, judge. And you would be as a person of big social standing. And that has, of course, changed. But as I say, it's a question of generation, because all the young persons, they really like having colleagues, being able to have professional discussions with colleagues, and it's easier to attract the young law students to work with us. So the professional environment, from my perspective, I consider myself one of the young judges. So it's much better from my perspective, but I know my husband is also a judge, and he doesn't think it's better. He liked it more before. So I think that's a bit double-edged also. And what we can also see is that because the distance between the district courts is bigger, we have a tradition of moving around and working in big courts, small courts, so on. That is more difficult now, because you have to move 100 kilometers. Before, you could stay in one place, and then you could work in one court and in another, and you would stay with your family and your working spouse, because that's another thing that, in Denmark, I think it's about 90% of all women work. So in most families, you have to find two working places if you want to move your family. And very often you will have to find 2 academic working places. And that can be challenging and especially if you are married to another lawyer, because there are all kinds of troubles also with the double interest and so on. So the mobility of employees within the courts is not as strong as it was before. It's still very good for your career to change work district courts, so that is still very influencing people's decision, but it's not as easy as before. And if you have a spouse who have a good job, perhaps you will just live with that you will only ever become a deputy judge. That's not good for the system, because then it will just, you should have this ambition within the system. That's how you get good employees, that they are ambitious. Yes. Another aspect that I need to say, we have 24 new court buildings or rebuilt. That was really good. And we have this higher level of digitization, but it's very challenging, and I know that you all know that. During implementation, as I already told you, we had a slower case flow, and it was really slow in the beginning because there were so many things, practical things to handle, as we did it all in one hit and run. And so that was really hard for some courts. The court of Glostrup was a merging of 7 small district courts, and we were the worst influenced by this slower case flow because we were also the biggest merger, and that was really, really hard. And it took 2 years to lower this, to stabilize the case flow. The nearest courthouse is further away. I already told about the personnel, but also for the lawyers, that was troublesome. And I just spoke with the head of the Lawyers Association last week, and he told that they can see that in the cities that don't have a district court any longer, the law firms, they disappear. And also legal aid is more difficult to obtain for the citizens of those cities because there are no longer local lawyers. They are in the towns where the courts are. Of course, it's not black and white like that, but this is also a thing for lawyers to take into consideration, that it's not as attractive to be in a city without a court. And then, of course, reduced level of local knowledge and attachment. I used to be a bailiff in a small district court. I knew every house because I sold them on auction, and I knew a lot of families from first they came with their family law cases, then with criminal cases, and they had a dispute with the neighbor and so on. So you had this local knowledge. Good or bad, you can consider it, but you don't have it on that level. And perhaps that's nice today to have a bigger distance. So that's also something that is a bit double. But that is some highlights that I thought might have an international interest. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to ask them now or during intermission. Or you can write me. I've put my email address here, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. Yes, that was what I had chosen to bring now.
Ok, grazie Eva per la relazione. Un paio di domande, visto che probabilmente verso la fine, curiosità che ha sollevato Eva. Prego Patricia. Ok, sure. You have to come here, Patricia, because we have just one mic. Sorry about that. If you can stand your name so
yes.
that's for the radio stream.
Buongiorno, mi chiamo Patrizia Branco, vengo dal Portogallo e farò la domanda in inglese che per me è più facile. I would like to know, you said that the implementation of the reform took place on the 1st of January of 2007. How long did it take to prepare? Between the law and the implementation, how long did courts have to prepare everything? Question of months, question of years? Thank you.
Okay, this is really scary for someone who is planning. The law was confirmed by the Parliament on the 2nd of June 2006. But of course, we had planned it it was coming, we saw it coming for several years. I started at the court and in the court administration in May 2005 because there were so political movements so that you could see that it would come. And there was this big municipal reform. It was a big wish from within the courts also to have the reform. And there was a report prepared in 2001 making more or less the outline. And then there was a period when it was first presented, the politicians said, no way. But they changed their mind because they wanted this reform of the municipalities. So that was our sort of, I don't know what you say in English, but that lifted us. We came with them on that, with that decision. And we could see that coming in the end of 2004, and then I started my work in 2005. So years, months. But I can assure you that we knew the law would be confirmed by the Parliament, but we could not send letters that we are supposed to by law for our employees. You cannot move them unless you do that with a certain limit, and they had to be sent by the 9th of June, so we were busy. I myself was, putting letters in to do everything correct.
Just another question, if there is from the floor, please.
Buongiorno, mi chiamo Luca Brandino, sono un avvocato. Una domanda di carattere pratico. Lei ha detto che questo sistema, questo cambiamento ovviamente ha comportato anche la costruzione di nuovi edifici dove sistemare le nuove corti. La mia domanda sembrerebbe stupida, ma credo sia pertinente. Nel momento in cui si è deciso questo cambio, gli edifici già c'erano oppure sono stati costruiti dopo? Perché poi lo vedremo nel pomeriggio, uno dei più grossi problemi che abbiamo noi è che facciamo le riforme senza considerare poi gli aspetti pratici. Se possiamo riunire tutti in un'unica corte d'appello, io vengo da Siracusa, dalla Sicilia, ma oggi pensare per esempio di portare tutto a Catania sarebbe una follia, perché già al momento attuale non c'è neanche lo spazio per poter mettere un nuovo fascicolo. Grazie.
Yes, that was also very challenging in Denmark, but of course we were not able to make all those buildings in 6 months. So we didn't have the buildings from the beginning. But there was a decision that we should create new buildings, and we had negotiated to have the funding for it. That was in the law. That was the background for the reform, that every court should have one building, and because we would not obtain this strengthening of the the professional environment if we were to work in 7 different buildings. So what we did was, and I also think that my boss made a very smart decision. He said, no solutions that are intermediary before we have the permanent solution. We will not accept that, okay, we will do that for 2 or 3 years and then we will make the permanent decision. We will only decide what we will do in the meantime when we have the permanent decision. And that was smart, I think, because then we forced people to make this permanent decision. But for example, the Court of Glostrup was very lucky because of this municipal reform. There was a building that was free because another public service left this building, and it was okay as a court building. So we knew where we were to go, but we only went there at the end of 2007. And that was also part of the reason why the case flow went so slow, because we were driving, that was still the paper days, so we were driving cases from one building to another, and people would meet up in the wrong courthouse because their hearing was not in this courthouse but in another courthouse 5 kilometers away, and we would have to cancel hearings because people couldn't make it in time and things like that. But today we have every court building is now finished, but the last one was only finished, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. So that was a long process.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you very much again for your presentation. I'm speaking English because the people have already their headset. So I'm asking also to address the floor to Robert van der Laan, which is a consultant for the Judicial Council in the Netherlands. Thank you. Thank you.
Tecnicamente Enrico no, te lo chiedo perché sennò io sono ancora più distante.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Robert van der Laan. I'm an advisor to the Council of the Judiciary in the Netherlands, and the Council exists of 4 members currently. By law, the Council has a minimum of 3 members and a maximum of 5 members. And the Council has a staff of about 100 people, and I'm one of them, and they have a lot of different backgrounds. I'm a sociologist and background in human resources, but we also have economists, econometrists, psychologists, a lot of different backgrounds in the office. So thank you for inviting me. I'm loving to share our experience with you. I need my glasses.
You want to borrow mine?
Also reached the age of 50. Well, I would like to start the presentation with a short explanation about the Dutch judiciary, followed by an explanation why we have reformed our judicial map. I also want to tell you something about what we took into consideration in our preparation of the reform, and finally I would like to mention some lessons we have learned until now. I say until now because at the moment we are evaluating the reform, but the evaluation is being done by an independent committee, and no members of the judiciary are in the committee, so I don't know what the outcome will be. So the lessons learned are my own observations. First, the judiciary. I work for the council, and the council, the area of the council is only the purple organizations you see behind me. We have 11 district courts and 4 courts of appeal, and we also have 2 special tribunals. So the Supreme Court and the Council of State and the Public Prosecution Office is not a part of the judiciary. And we also have some support units like an IT organization, a training organization, and a shared service organization. Well, the Council supervises operational management of the courts, and the Council distributes the resources among the courts. It's good to mention that the annual budget of the judiciary is output-based and is obtained by multiplying the price per case by the number of cases expected in that year. So we negotiate with the Minister of Justice every 3 years about the price of cases. We have 10 categories of cases. And we negotiate each year about the amount of cases for that year. So the budget of the judiciary is yearly set. And it's about 1 billion euros. The total caseload of the judiciary in 2016 was 1.6 million cases, and about 1 million of these cases are small claims cases that are, in our country, the cases limited to 25,000 euros. And within the judiciary, we have about 2,500 judges and 7,000 support staff employees. So about a little less than 10,000 people working for the judiciary, and they are all employee of the judiciary. They're not an employee of the ministry. So why did we reform the judicial map? Well, the overall reason for reforming the judicial map was ensuring the quality of the judiciary for the future. The caseload became and still becomes more and more differentiated, but also the knowledge needed to handle cases was and is increasing due to, for example, technological development and growing importance of European law. And also there's a growing demand on quality from litigants, lawyers, and other professionals. For example, a demand for IT-facilitated proceedings. So the judiciary had to reform to keep up with these changes and demands. So the first goal of the reform is to improve the quality of the accessibility of the primary process. And as you can notice, our reform has no efficiency goal. So the reform was expected to be cost neutral. It was possible to maintain and improve the high level of quality and accessibility, because when you organize larger units, the caseload of the units will also be larger and more differentiated. And we aim to organize a unit with at least 20 judges. In the situation before the reform, we had units with sometimes no more than 4 to 6 judges. And we experienced that it's nearly impossible to organize specialization in such small units. Another advantage of larger units is that it is easier to maintain a high quality level. Due to the differentiation of the cases and also the differentiation in the complexity of cases, judges can keep their experience up to level, because they have a lot of different cases and not doing all day long all the same cases until you're not learning from them anymore. And it's in the course of time, judges in smaller units cannot handle complex cases simply because of lack of experience and knowledge. And of course, the adjunction of cases gets less vulnerable. This is an advantage for litigants, because less vulnerable administrations handle cases on average more quickly. So now I would like to show you our former and current judicial map. This is the judicial map as it was before 2013. So 19 districts with 19 district courts and 55 district court venues. You see the square dots and the little round dots. The little round dots are the very small district courts with maybe a few judges working there. And the current judicial map is more like this. We went from 19 to 11 districts and from 55 to 32 district court venues. So we closed 25 and we built one new court. And we went from 19 to 11 boards of the courts. So also we have a lot less board members because in the former situation it was normal to have about 6 members of the board, 1 president, 1 director of operations, and for each legal field 1 judge. So in the judiciary, the judiciary itself determines where cases are handled. We don't determine the locations, the venues. So the 32 venues is a decision made by the minister, and the minister has to check this by Parliament. But within the 32 district courts, the board can decide which case are handled where within its district. They also can determine which location will have an office. And in the current situation, most courts, of course, have an office, but we still have about 2 courts without an office. It's you see, these 2 are very close to each other. This Nijmegen and Arnhem, and because it takes about 50 minutes to travel from the one court to the other, they put the office of all the judges and staff in the place with the Arnhem, the black-colored location. And the black-colored locations are also the locations where the board of the court is seated. Also, the courts of appeal in the former situation we had 5 regions, districts, and in the new situation you see only the eastern part have merged into 1 court of appeal. Into consideration before starting the reform, we had a few criteria. That the district has to be larger than 300,000 inhabitants, and also there should be no court location within a distance of 15 kilometers of a main location. We also wanted to have that the 10 biggest cities in the Netherlands have a court. That's why we started 1 new location. Because we have one is to close the 25 venues at once, but it took about 1.5 to 2 years after 2013, before they were closed. Also, the district borders we take into consideration. The basic principle is that the judiciary, the public prosecution service, the national police and the Netherlands bar share the same districts. And also we experienced that you don't want to disturb the old district borders because we did disturb a district border. The city of Amsterdam, the district, became a little bit smaller. It was only a little bit, about 10,000 cases connected to that area. But it was impossible to transfer those cases to the new courts because we couldn't separate them in our system. So it was not as big as a problem because it was only 10,000 cases. That's why we decided to keep them in Amsterdam, and only the new cases in that area went to the new court. So we didn't transfer any old cases at all. That was the best solution at that time. But I think it was a large problem if there was a lot more cases involved. Also, the size of the court. So I mentioned that already. You have to have enough judges in a department to make specialization possible. We set it on 20 judges, and also because when you have a larger department, you have more cases, and only when you have cases enough, you can. It's possible to specialize and make judges. So in the Netherlands, we have a minimum size of a court is with 5 departments, and the average court in the Netherlands has about 150 judges. It's like this: 150 judges in total. The average courts in the Netherlands, about 500 people working there, so 150 judges, and something more than half of them, of the 500, is support staff, in judicial support staff and operational support staff. So in terms of cases, the smallest court is about 100 cases a year, and the biggest is about 100,000 cases. And the biggest court is about 180,000 cases. So what challenges did we came across? Well, the strong role of the Senate in the Netherlands. They would only approve the reform of the Judicial Map Act on the one condition, that is that the largest planned court, the East Netherlands, had to be split in 2 courts. And that was a little bit of a problem because the parliament is at the end of the development of the act. So there was only a short period of time to make a new act, because in the Netherlands it's not possible for the Senate to amend, to change an act. You have to start a whole proceedings for new law proceedings over again. And it had to be done in 6 months. And it was normally, on average, a new law takes about 2 years. So this had to be speeded up. But they wanted it very much, so they succeeded in speeding up. But it wasn't fast enough to start with 11 courts on the 1st of January. So we had to first start with 10 courts, and then after 3 months, when we were ready to make the split possible, we had the 11 courts in the Netherlands. 2 minutes, thank you. Let me see what is... This is also the integrating of courts. We, especially when we have in the northern part of the Netherlands, we merged 3 courts, and the cultural differences are big, I can say, because one part of this court is the Frisian district, and they are very strong culture, have strong own culture, and you also see that when you put 3 courts together, all of them think their proceedings are the best, because the proceedings, the way they work within the court, are all different, and everybody wants to keep their own way of working. And that's not possible. So it takes a lot of time. It's still going on, I think, after 5 years almost, to make it one court. But because when you come nowadays in the northern part of the Netherlands, you still recognize the old courts within the new court. Well, the scale of the courts, there was also a big discussion, also because the splitting of the big court in the Netherlands, it's still going on. There are some examples in healthcare which aren't the best examples, with hospitals who merged and became very big, and that's why there's a lot of resistance against the bigger courts. But we try to make a connection between scale and productivity, but it doesn't seem to be a very strong relation. So it's I don't know if the scale of the course, if that's a good topic to discuss about. Maybe end it here.
That's
because
fine.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Robert. You're perfectly on time.
Thank you.
Couple of questions for Robert from the audience. Please. Yeah.
Buongiorno, il mio nome è Walter Pompeo, sono presidente dell'Ordine degli Avvocati di Caltagirone. Mi è sembrato di capire che nei Paesi Bassi non esisterebbe una predeterminazione del giudice competente per singoli casi, soprattutto con riferimento alla dimensione territoriale. Allora, se ho ben capito, ci sarebbe un'autorità superiore, forse il Ministero della Giustizia, che decide quali casi attribuire a quale ufficio, se ho ben capito. Se fosse questa la realtà, mi chiedo quali sono i criteri che poi governano l'assegnazione dei casi ai singoli uffici e se nei Paesi Bassi, così come avviene in Italia, esiste un principio che è quello del giudice naturale, cioè della predeterminazione per ipotesi generali del giudice al quale affidare quali competenze. Questa è la domanda, grazie.
Thank you. First of all, the minister doesn't decide where the cases are being handled. He only decides where the location is within the geographical region. So the board of the court decides which cases are handled where. So it's up to the judiciary if they want to have the criminal cases in one part of the district. It's up to the board. And what do they take into consideration? For example, when you have criminal cases, you need no, you need for the prisoners. You need the cell complex. No, well, you need some in the building. You have you need some facilitating the criminal cases, and you need another building for criminal cases than for civil cases. So it's more. So you can't organize criminal cases in every location because you don't have the facilitations in every location. So that's one, for example, one criteria.
Okay.
Yeah?
Se posso un attimo? Ci avete capito? Cioè, nel senso, l'ha risposto? No. Okay. No, non c'è il giudice naturale per costituito per legge, punto. No. Però non è neanche il Ministero della Giustizia che assegna, ovviamente, nel senso che quello che ha segnalato, che adesso poi sarà anche da approfondire anche per il sottoscritto, ovviamente, che non ho studiato in maniera dettagliata questo aspetto, è che però che quando hanno creato sostanzialmente questo board, che da noi potrebbe essere tradotto in maniera molto diversa per quanto riguarda le funzioni, ma è un consiglio giudiziario. Il consiglio giudiziario ha effettivamente sul territorio acquisito progressivamente una grande autonomia anche nella definizione di dove allocare eventualmente la specializzazione dei giudici, cosa che, ripeto, sembra lontana anni luce nella situazione italiana, però è stata portata avanti con molta fatica e con un po' di anni, proprio in questa volontà di dare maggiore potere e anche maggiore autorevolezza, se vogliamo, e anche capacità organizzativa sotto il profilo locale, insomma, in un paese tutto sommato, se ci pensiamo, ovviamente molto più piccolo rispetto all'Italia. Quindi loro stessi hanno individuato nell'esigenza di una sorta di, fra virgolette, localismo, l'indispensabilità per migliorare l'efficienza e dare maggiore potere a quello che noi tradurremo il Consiglio giudiziario, con una formazione comunque ovviamente molto diversa, con funzioni diverse. Però è un'idea molto particolare, insomma, molto particolare.
Chiedevo anche se ci fossero dei criteri che guidassero la scelta e quindi anche il livello di discrezionalità nella selezione.
There's no translation.
Okay, sorry, because it was no mic. So he asked, you said that there is a possibility, to move cases from one court to another based on decision of the board. So
within their district.
There are some written somehow criteria to move the cases from one place to another, or they are not?
Yes, for example, cases like juvenile law and family law, we want to organize them as close as possible to the litigants, and so they don't have to travel too much. And criminal cases, those people are being transported to the court, so that's not as important to be as close to them. So we can centralize criminal cases better.
That's a decision by the board. So it's a decision by the Minister of Justice.
It's a decision by the board, and it has to be approved by the council.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we're running out a little bit of time. So we are running a little bit out of time, even if I was authorized to postpone a little bit the lunch break. But thanks again, Robert. And I will ask Patricia to come over and to address the audience. Patricia is a researcher at the Centro Studi Sociali of the University of Coimbra, and she has been living in Italy for a while, so we are very happy to have her here. Thank you, Patricia.
Grazie mille.
You're going to speak in English or in Italian?
In English.
Okay, she's going to speak in English even if she lives in Italy.
Buongiorno a tutti e a tutte, per me è un gran piacere essere qui oggi e presentarvi il caso portoghese e per questo voglio ringraziare l'invito che mi è stato rivolto dalla parte del Consiglio Nazionale Forense e dall'IRSIG CNR, in particolare il dottore Carnevale e l'avvocato Merli. Infatti per una questione di facilità personale farò la presentazione in inglese, però sono disponibile per fare il dibattito in italiano se poi lo volete. Allora, as you know, Portugal is a relatively small country in the Iberian Peninsula with a population of about 10 million people living in a total area of about 92,000 square kilometers. In less than a decade, Portugal witnessed 3 reforms of the judicial map in 2008, 2014, and in January of this year, respectively. And the one implemented in September of 2014 had intense effects in terms of the judiciary's territorial and management structures. I will thus present those 3 reforms, their main criteria, results, and some problems and criticisms. I will also point specific problems that need careful assessment and which have emerged in the implementation of these reforms. Let me start with a brief presentation of the present Portuguese judicial configuration in terms of the first instance courts. The Constitution of the Portuguese Republic establishes a distinction between civil jurisdiction and administrative jurisdiction. Portugal's civil jurisdiction is presently divided into 23 court districts called comarcas, each with a main judicial court based in the capitals of the existing administrative districts, which are 18. The exceptions are Lisbon and Oporto, that are divided into 3 and 2 court districts respectively due to their high caseloads. Each of these court districts is divided into central and local court departments or instancias. Such division has to do with jurisdictional rules of competence based on territory, matter, and value. The central court departments have jurisdiction over the geographic area corresponding to the court district and are divided into civil, criminal, and specialized sections or juízos, such as commercial, enforcement, family and children, criminal and labor sections, and are usually in the central municipality of the administrative district. Cases not allocated to the central court departments are processed by the local court departments, which have general jurisdiction sections divided into civil, criminal, and petty crime. And then we also have proximity sections. All of these are in the other municipalities of the administrative district. Over the last decades, studies on the Portuguese justice system have highlighted challenges regarding issues such as the length of proceedings, this is not new in Italy as well, or court delays, particularly in relation to enforcement procedures, and high case loads with high numbers of pending cases, as you can see from the graphics. In early 2011, in the wake of the financial crisis affecting the Eurozone, and having lost market access, the Portuguese authorities requested financial assistance from the International Monetary Fund, the European Commission, and the European Central Bank, the so-called Troika. In May 2011, Portugal signed a 3-year economic adjustment program with the Troika, which the country exited in June 2014 and is now under post-program surveillance. And on this topic of the austerity measures and what Portugal went through, there was recently a very interesting interview with António Costa, our Prime Minister, and it was on the website of La República, the newspaper. This economic adjustment program signed by Portugal with the Troika, called Memorandum of Understanding, imposed some conditions, especially in terms of structural reforms to undertake in key sectors. One was, of course, the judicial sector. As the memorandum stated, Portugal needed to improve the function of the judicial system, which is essential for the proper and fair functioning of the economy, through 1, effective and timely enforcement of contracts and competition rules. 2, which is the one that interests us today, is increasing the efficiency by restructuring the court system and adopting new court management models. And 3, reducing slowness of the system. So this brings me to the core of this talk, the 3 reforms Portugal underwent between 2008 and 2017. So, in 2008, that is, before the signature of the memorandum in 2011, Law 52 from 2008 had conceived a revision of the judicial organization that was by then regulated by a law from 1999. The reform was implemented in April of 2009, and it aimed at substituting the 231 courts that we have by then by 39, but there was no intention of closing courts. It was a reform based on a pilot model, so it was only implemented in 3 pilot counties that you can see with the arrows. The counties of Baixo Voga, Grande Lisboa Noroeste, and Alentejo Litoral. But the aim was to extend it nationally on a phased process after examination of the pilot's results. The reform had 3 specific objectives. 1, a wider territorial template, the so-called NUTS, or Nomenclature of Territorial Units for Statistics. 2nd, a new model of court management. And 3rd, to enlarge the specialization of courts at a national level. According to a study made by Sciences Po Strasbourg Consulting in 2012, the judicial actors did not show great interest for this reform due precisely to its experimental nature and to its application only on a small scale, the 3 pilots. Thus, in May 2011, when Portugal signed the memorandum, it was precisely this reform that was on the table, and thus the Troika asked the government to expedite the implementation of the judicial reform map, creating 39 court units with added management support for each unit, and such implementation should occur until the end of 2012. But in the midst of this financial and political turmoil, the government resigned, there were general early elections, and a new government took place in June 2011. Again, the political question that Avvocato Merli was talking about, the president of the Consiglio was talking about, the successive parties and political governments and all the reforms that they want to implement. So there was a new government, a coalition of center-right-wing parties. And in November 2011, Law 52 was revoked and the reform suspended. According to the Ministry of Justice at the time, Paula Teixeira da Cruz, this suspension was due to the fact they deem it necessary to simplify the judicial organization, possibly more in line with the remaining territorial organization of the public services, that is, discarding the NUTS division that was previously made by the law from 2008. Consequently, a working group was settled and proposals were made in a short two-year consultation period that was anything but serene. I'm sorry. Chiedo scusa, io parlo velocemente, lo so.
Te lo ripeto io, non ti
sì,
preoccupare.
va bene. Lo so, the translators always have a problem.
It's portoghese, you know.
Ma ogni tanto i portoghesi parlano veloce come gli italiani.
Un pochino più piano perché così riescono a tradurre
sì,
meglio, ok?
Va bene, scusatemi. So this period, this two-year consultation period was anything but serene. And in September of 2014, Law 62 from 2013 was implemented without any previous pilot. So the law came out, was promulgated in March of 2013, and it was implemented in the 1st of September of 2014. So it was only a 4-month period to settle the whole thing. That's why I asked about the implementation period. So what were the main changes? Firstly, the reform reduced the 39 counties proposed in 2008 to 23 comarcas or court districts, now having the administrative district as the territorial unit. Secondly, and one of the most criticized aspects of this reform, was the physical closure of 20 courts. I know this is not this is a very modest number compared to what happened in other European countries. Even so, these courts were closed mainly in the interior part of the country. Hence, the several manifestations by local populations and authorities invoking the symbolic importance of having the courthouse in those localities as the sovereign body and a public service, on the other hand, and as a means of territorial cohesion against urban desertification, on the other hand. The criteria proposed and used was, as you can read from the slide, 1, a procedural volume of less than 250 incoming cases, a distance likely to be made in less than 1 hour, quality of the facilities, evolution of the local population, supply of alternative dispute resolution means, and services, information access to justice services for the citizens. Such criteria was deemed, on the one hand, insufficient and inadequate, as judicial statistics were said to be inaccurate, particularly the number of cases per judge and per court. On the other hand, these criteria revealed a unitary vision of the country, not respecting local idiosyncrasies, local legal cultures, and territorial necessities. Furthermore, traveling distance and time was considered imprecise and an obstacle in terms of geographical access to justice, as the populations affected have scarce economic resources and the territories are poorly served in terms of public transport services. Thirdly, the creation of a network of judicial services composed of central and local instances, as I mentioned earlier, as well as of judicial extensions called sections of proximity. These are destituted of judicial function, but they do provide some services like hearing witnesses via video conference, examining court documents, because now everything is digitized, so you can have access to all documents in the process, going to these sections of proximity, but knowing what is going on in other sections of that district court. Fourthly, and possibly the most positive feature, was the implementation of a new management model for the entire court district, composed of judge president, prosecutor coordinator, because the prosecutor services are part of the court, and also a court manager, who is a court official, and they will all work together with the management and the consultant boards. This model increased the flexibility in the use of resources, both human and material, and a rationalization in terms of work units. Before, each court was an independent management unit, and currently it is the court district which is the unit, thus permitting a global outlook of both problems and resources, and it has to develop annual working plans, budget and personnel requirements, which are now accessible on an online platform for each district, each court district or comarca. Finally, the specialization process and the expansion of the territorial reach of specialized courts also increased from 22% to 88% of the national territory, which still is not enough, especially taking into account family and children sections. Such specialization was met with a territorial concentration of these specialized courts in the central municipalities of the court districts, creating distances between specialization and local populations. In addition, the implementation process produced several troubles, most notably the unavailability of the court's electronic platform, something that is not unfamiliar. The platform is called CITUS, and it was unavailable for 2 whole months, and it's still now creating problems, although everything is somehow si è assestato, diciamo così. Also, the incomplete physical migration of court cases from closed courts to concentrated ones with anecdotic incidents by bicycle, by bus, whatever. The shortage of human resources, such as judges, prosecutors, and particularly judicial officials, and of course the maladjustment of court facilities. The manifestations of local authorities and populations during the discussion of the reform, through protests, precautionary measures, and popular actions presented by the municipalities against the closure of the courts, were channeled by the main opposition parties in their electoral programs throughout the 2015 elections, in which the reform of the judicial map was amply criticized and the reopening of some of the courts considered a necessary measure for the readjustment of the judicial map, especially considering the geographical distance between the populations and the structures in the territory. So in November of 2015, a new center-left-wing government took office, and in May of 2016, so last year, the new Minister of Justice, Francisca Van Dunen, announced new measures to be implemented. These new measures, enforced in January of this year, have as a primary aim to correct the deficit on territorial proximity. Thus, the 20 courts that were closed were transformed into sections of proximity, which, although not being full courts, in the traditional sense, do perform some judicial functions. In particular, now local hearings, as a rule, do have to take place there. Moreover, 4 of the 27 previous sections of proximity were converted into local sections with full judicial functions. On the other hand, these measures concerned in particular local criminal sections and the specialized jurisdiction of family and children. So new 7 family sections were created, and to alleviate distance, some procedures in from family law were transferred to a number of local sections. In those cases where the geographical characteristics and scarce supply of public transport discourage, according to the legislator, the creation of specialized sections in those areas. These new measures were not, of course, without critique, and this time also at a supranational level. At a national level, the major criticism had to do with the balance between specialization, concentration, and proximity, particularly in a jurisdiction such as family and children. At a supranational level, the International Monetary Fund, in a document issued in September of 2016, expressed some apprehensions, hence arguing that the authorities should put on hold the reinstatement of the courts and expansion of services, pending a full consideration of a detailed cost-benefit analysis with the overall objective to bring the number of courts more closely in line with the European average.
Sorry. No, don't worry.
Okay. So to sum up, we could characterize the first reform as experimental, the second one as a response to external pressures, and the last reform as a corrective endeavor. So what do statistics say? Just very briefly, the last statistics revealed that the number of cases pending has decreased. And the clearance rate increased now, it's now 131.3%. So the number of complete cases has exceeded the number of new cases. Also, the EU Justice Scoreboard, published in April, as you can see, the little star, claims that Portugal had the second highest clearance rate in 2015. This, of course, still has a lot of criticism because judges, some of them do not believe in the judicial statistics, and they say that if you do a deeper analysis of each caseload, it has improved less than what the official statistics say. Regarding a qualitative viewpoint, I've started to interview some judges now and prosecutors and court managers to understand what is their opinion, and they have a very positive opinion regarding the management model. They say that it is really functioning, although it still has some problems, but it has given a new impact on the way courts do function. I just wanted to finish by considering some points. First of all, the importance of court facilities. I think that in Portugal this was crucial. We have courts functioning in containers now because we didn't have a full facility to put the court there. So even though it's temporary, it's a container. What does it say about dignity? What does it say about working conditions? That was one point. The other point was the conflict between specialization and concentration. So it has to do with the geographical distance and the territory served. This was really a unitary vision of the country that did not respect the tensions between center and periphery, between north and south, between coastal line and the interior. And these are very important to consider also because there are asymmetries. There may be asymmetries that are coming out from this reform. You have different judiciaries, different judicial countries in just one. Another issue has to do with the possible conflict now between specialization and proximity. Why? Because by giving back competences from the specialized courts to the local instances, you may be losing the knowledge that was acquired in terms of professionals, also in terms of the court building, because these courts do have specific rooms, hearing rooms, like for hearing children, and you know now that a child-friendly justice is a very important thing, and you have to have good court facilities for doing this. Two other points: the reforms time after time, because it's a reform after reform after reform. There is no time to think about the implementation, no time to really think about the results. When one thing is already starting to produce some results, you change it, and this is complicated for the administration, for a good administration of justice. And finally, the reforms in Portugal, I think that they have attested there are tensions between the supranational, the national, and the local levels. And these do need to be taken into account. In 2014, this reform aimed, as I said, to respond to the external pressure. So it was about requirements of market stability, austerity, efficiency, and competitiveness. Whereas the recent reform aimed at responding to the local pressure, so a way of compensating local populations and territories. Grazie mille, grazie della vostra attenzione.
Grazie Patrizia. Una domanda per Patricia? Qualcuno? Curiosità? Prego. Oh, prego, visto che hai già parlato. Prego. No, prego.
Good morning, I am Antonio Florio and...
Può fare la domanda in italiano se vuole.
Perfetto. No, forse questo non va. Oh sì, perfetto. Abbiamo visto che praticamente
È più facile, deve molto vicino alla bocca.
Abbiamo visto che il sistema è molto simile all'attuale situazione giudiziaria e anche sociale, è molto simile.
Il microfono lì, altrimenti non può fare la traduzione.
Ok. Abbiamo visto che la situazione giudiziaria e anche sociale è molto simile alla nostra situazione italiana. Questo legislatore quasi schizofrenico che quindi cambia in continuazione. Noi siamo in una fase in cui ancora non siamo arrivati alla riforma del 2016, quella che poi ha reinserito dei nuovi tribunali, ci siamo fermati alla sottrazione di alcuni tribunali. Però nel suo intervento ho soltanto un aspetto, non ho capito bene, non ho ben... Ah, ok. No, vabbè, non c'è problema. Era quello dell'aspetto telematico, perché con la riforma del 2013 che è stata introdotta l'aspetto telematico c'è stato, come ha detto lei, un grande disservizio all'inizio, che però poi un pochettino si è sistemato. E nella riforma del 2016 come è stato cambiato oppure è rimasto lo stesso? E soprattutto gli effetti positivi dal 2013 si stanno cominciando a vedere? Perché anche per noi è importante. Grazie mille.
Grazie della domanda. Allora, il processo telematico in Portogallo funziona molto bene in termini del sistema giudiziario. Infatti è stato uno dei più, laudati, non so se si può dire così, apprezzati in termini europei. Sfortunatamente in quei 2 mesi non ha funzionato, però poi tutto si è assestato e adesso funziona molto molto bene. Infatti tutto è digitalizzato e per questo da ogni punto della comarca è possibile sapere come va il processo nell'altro punto. Infatti quando ci sono problemi di personale, se per caso c'è qualcuno che non può per questione di malattia, è possibile adesso, perché è tutto digitalizzato, che un ufficiale sia in una sezione sempre dentro della comarca, del distretto, può lavorare essendo lontano in quell'altro punto della comarca, perché funziona e funziona bene. Non è stato cambiato nel 2016, infatti sono state misure di correctness, di aggiustamento, perché solo in termini di giustizia criminale e giustizia di famiglia, perché erano quelle che erano più lontane dalla popolazione locale, perché erano concentrate nella sede del distretto, e per una questione di accesso geografico sono solo state corrette queste qua. Per il resto tutto è stato mantenuto, dalla gestione, dal processo telematico, tutto il resto funziona nello stesso modo. Infatti adesso ci sono questo punto della gestione è infatti il punto più positivo, perché consente una visione globale di quello che succede in tutta la comarca, io dico comarca perché per me è il mio termine, è il distretto, e permette vedere quello che succede, se c'è qualche deficit in termini di personale, in termini di uffici, diciamo di edificio, è possibile fare la gestione di tutto il distretto. Invece prima c'era un giudice presidente per ogni tribunale, adesso abbiamo un giudice presidente, un procuratore coordinatore e un manager che fanno tutto quello che deve essere fatto per il distretto, e poi si è abbassata enormemente the pending cases, sono abbassati. Queste sono le misure positive che cominciano a dare il risultato, a produrre il risultato.
Grazie. Grazie, molto gentile. Ti ringraziamo, Patrizia.
Grazie a voi.
Grazie. Gilles, chiedo a Gilles di venire al tavolo dei relatori. Quale dei due preferisci? Tutte e due? Per cominciare? Sì, ma te li apri tutte e due così le metto lì con insieme. Sì. Questa? Dopo? Okay. Sì, un attimo, perché me li aperti tutti qua.
Per cambiare come
sì, in Word, in PDF. Vabbè, spingi la freccia su, fai su. No, ci devi scorrere, non so perché l'ho aperto così. Ok?
Dov'è?
È qua, in centrale.
D'accordo.
Vai su.
Sì.
E un po', vai, quelli qui qua, ok? It's a PDF, it's not a PDF. Allora, do la parola a Gilles Comandò, che ha una notevole esperienza in varie funzioni giudiziarie, non solo in Francia. Attualmente, come diceva l'avvocato Merli, presidente della Corte d'Appello di Pau in Francia, come detto, e ha una collaborazione ormai da vari anni con la Commissione per l'efficienza della giustizia del Consiglio d'Europa nel cosiddetto working group che si occupa di qualità della giustizia. Gilles, il floor è tuo.
Grazie a te. Buongiorno a tutti e a tutte. Grazie anche al Presidente di questo mattino, il Presidente Merli. Allora, vado a parlare in italiano, è un po' difficile per me, ma è meglio che parlare inglese. Allora, parliamo della Francia. Riguardo alla popolazione, ci sono 67 milioni di abitanti in Francia, contro 60 milioni in Italia. La superficie delle nazioni invece è di 550.000 chilometri quadrati contro i 310.000 chilometri quadrati dell'Italia. Dunque, ad una popolazione simile corrisponde un territorio quasi doppio. Vado prima di parlare sul questo è il plan. Il primo punto sull'ordinamento giudiziario in Francia. Per capire i dibattiti suscitati dalla Carta giudiziaria in Francia conviene descrivere prima le principali giurisdizioni francesi. Prima di tutto le giurisdizioni di première instance, ossia le giurisdizioni ordinarie. Si dividono in due categorie: i tribunali di grande istanza, se c'è, come si fa per avere più grandi? No, questo qui. Sì. Dunque, no, sì. Allora, ho visto la...
Devi spostare. No, ma qua.
Sì, wow. Sì, ma vorrei mostrare quella parte del sud.
Andiamo in sud.
Perché
andiamo a sud.
sempre nel sud della Francia. I tribunali di grande istanza, ci sono 157 tribunali di questo tipo in Francia metropolitana, con un minimo di uno per dipartimento. Per esempio, ho fatto il presidente del tribunale di Cahors nel centro-sud qui della Francia, e ci sono soltanto un tribunale. Poi sono anche divenuto presidente di tribunale di Avignon nel dipartimento di Vaucluse, ma ci sono due tribunali, Avignon e Carpentras. I tribunali d'instanza, ci sono 297 tribunali di questo tipo, hanno una competenza di attribuzione, cioè sono competenti solamente nei litigi civili con un risarcimento di meno di 10.000 euro, oppure a seconda del tipo di caso. Per esempio, i litigi tra proprietario e inquilino e i casi di tutele. Prima, le giurisdizioni d'instanze specializzate. Queste giurisdizioni sono competenti a giudicare in particolare materie come la legislazione sul lavoro e sulle...
Questa?
No, ritorniamo in quella prova. La prima.
Vediamo se riusciamo ad andare dietro. Complicato.
È complicato.
No. Ok. Abbiate pazienza.
Sto parlando di tribunali specializzati. Abbiamo i tribunali di commercio, ce ne sono 134 e sono composti da soli professionisti, equivale a grandi linee al Tribunale delle Imprese italiano. Abbiamo anche i consigli detti dei prud'homme, equivale ai tribunali del lavoro italiani. Ce ne sono 203 in Francia. Sono composti di parti uguali da rappresentanti degli impiegati e da rappresentanti dei datori di lavoro. Inoltre esistono i tribunali per minori che si occupano dei casi di minorenni e che sono inseriti nei tribunali di grande istanza. Conviene sottolineare che non tutti i tribunali di grande istanza sono dotati di un tale giurisdizione speciale. Per esempio, ci sono 144 tribunali per minori, l'ho già detto, 157 tribunaux de grande instance. Abbiamo anche le cours d'assises o corti d'assise in italiano, termine trasparente, che giudicano i casi penali più importanti come i crimini. Ce n'è una per dipartimento, ovvero 95. Le giurisdizioni d'appello ordinarie, le corti d'appello, ci sono 30 nel paese. Vorrei avere la mappa. No, quello dopo normalmente. Sì, quello è il, se c'è possibile, potremmo per esempio, sono presidente e vorrei andare a Po per vi mostrare dove è. la parte nel sud, qui c'è una corte d'appello con 5 tribunali di grande instance su 3 dipartimenti. No, dunque ci sono 30 corti d'appello ordinarie. Quello che ho detto è soltanto per le tribunali che si trovano in Francia metropolitana, ma ce ne sono anche nei dipartimenti detti di outre-mer, ossia oltremare. Per esempio, esistono 7 corti d'appello fuori dalla Francia metropolitana. È una cosa importante. Ci sono 350 magistrati che lavorano in questi dipartimenti. Secondo punto, vorrei parlare dell'evoluzione dell'insediamento giudiziario in Francia. In Francia, in Francia, come in altri paesi, la geografia delle giurisdizioni ha subito numerosi cambiamenti. Alcune specificità nazionali traspaiono persino nelle scelte effettuate. Vi presenterò inoltre la nuova riforma. Dunque, le specificità francesi. Prima, la concezione dello Stato. La Francia, a differenza dell'Italia, è uno Stato costituito da più secoli. Malgrado la decentralizzazione avvenuta nel XX secolo, la Francia rimane uno Stato molto centralizzato. Cioè è evidente si paragonano Parigi e il resto della Francia detto province. Secondo punto, un approccio razionale. Tutta la riflessione legata alla carta della geografia giudiziaria è impregnata dalla volontà di razionalizzare l'influenza di Cartesio, Descartes, congiunta ad una visione fortemente centralizzata, permette di capire il perché del tema ricorrente della riforma della geografia giudiziaria in Francia. Altro punto, l'organizzazione diversa delle giurisdizioni giudiziarie e quelle amministrative. In Francia si sono, credo che c'è la stessa cosa in Italia, 2 ordinazioni, le giurisdizioni giudiziarie e quelle amministrative. La storia delle giurisdizioni giudiziarie si forma intorno a 2 problematiche storiche: il raggruppamento delle giurisdizioni e il loro insediamento. Però le giurisdizioni amministrative si sono sviluppate a partire del Consiglio di Stato. Per esempio, la creazione recente di corti d'appello amministrative si fa progressivamente secondo la necessità. Limiterò il mio discorso alla giurisdizione giudiziaria. Altro punto importante, la partecipazione delle procure alle politiche pubbliche. La concezione del ruolo della procura è ben diversa in Francia e in Italia. È concesso da noi che la procura partecipa all'elaborazione di una politica penale. È persino responsabile della sua elaborazione locale in collaborazione con altri servizi dello Stato, ma anche a livello dipartimentale e regionale. Cioè spiega l'importanza della delimitazione delle competenze territoriali delle procure. Infine vorrei parlare dell'adozione di riforme della geografia giudiziaria per ciò consecutivi. La visione razionale e centralizzata dei promotori di riforme ha a che fare con la riluttanza dei professionisti della legge e degli eletti locali, come a dire vero in altri paesi. Non esiste una riforma consensuale. Le riforme sono dunque poche. Negli anni 20 e 30 ci sono state solo 2 riforme importanti: nel 1958, periodo importante di cambiamento della vita politica e amministrativa francese, inizio della Quinta Repubblica, e alla fine del primo decennio degli anni 2000. Andiamo sulla riforma del 2007. Questa o sull'altro documento, quello, la page 12, non so. Questa riforma iniziata nel 2007 fu conclusa nel 2011. 300, sì, se c'è possibile di avere più grandi, 341 giurisdizioni sono state soppresse, ossia 1 su 4, tra cui 23 tribunali di grande instanza, 178 tribunali di istanza, 62 consigli dei prud'homme competenti nella legislazione del lavoro e 78 tribunali di commercio impresa. Uno dei principali criteri considerati è stata l'attività di queste giurisdizioni. Per esempio, per un TGI, il Tribunal de Grande Instance, è stato rilevante considerare la soglia di attività considerata efficiente 1550 casi civili e o 2100 casi penali in azione giudiziaria. 2500. Sì. Per i consigli di prud'homme ci sono 300 procedure, per esempio. Altri criteri presi da conto sono stati il mantenimento di almeno un tribunale per dipartimento, il mantenimento di un tribunale nel caso della vicinanza di un centro penitenziario di competenza con più di 400 detenuti. Per i tribunali di istanza, oltre il criterio di attività, un criterio importante è stato il tempo necessario per raggiungere il tribunale, circa una ora di viaggio. La riforma è stata effettuata per decreto, senza essere esaminata dal Parlamento e senza reale consultazione. Per esempio, il Ministero ha modificato 3 proposte di soppressione di tribunale e 65 proposte di soppressione di tribunali di istanza, senza esplicitare chiaramente le motivazioni di queste scelte. La Francia. Questa riforma è costata più di 450 milioni di euro. La maggiore parte delle spese, più di 3 su 4, è legata a delle operazioni immobiliari, acquisti e ristrutturazioni, nuovi contratti. Delle indennità speciali sono state versate ai magistrati e dipendenti dello Stato interessati da quelle operazioni. Questa riforma ha permesso una razionalizzazione degli insediamenti immobiliari con un rinnovo dei locali, per esempio sull'accesso handicappati e sulla sicurezza. In Francia abbiamo anche delle alternative, ritorniamo il primo documento il punto 3. Le alternative ad una modifica delle carte dell'insediamento giudiziario. Senza cambiare i luoghi della giustizia, la ripartizione delle competenze è stata modificata dallo sviluppo delle giurisdizioni con competenze speciali. Uno delle ripose per adattarsi alla necessità di specializzare dei magistrati in certe materie è stata di creare competenze territoriali diverse da quella ordinaria. Per esempio, in materia di lotta contro il terrorismo, la Procura di Parigi è competente su tutto il territorio nazionale. Lo stesso è stato implementato per la Procura nazionale finanziaria. I litigi su tutto il territorio sono sotto sua competenza a condizione che le infrazioni finanziarie commesse entrino nella sua competenza settoriale. Da una trentina d'anni le giurisdizioni a competenza regionale e interregionale si sviluppano notevolmente, per esempio, dopo i poli dell'istruzione, competenza dei giudici istruttori. Voi non avete più questa figura, noi l'abbiamo ancora. Per esempio, abbiamo, quando sono stato presidente a Avignon, un polo dell'istruzione per Avignon, Carpentras e anche per Privas nel Dipartimento di Ardèche. Questa competenza è per gli affari criminali o complessi. Abbiamo anche competenza particolare, per esempio per le giurisdizioni interregionali specializzate nella lotta contro la criminalità e la delinquenza organizzata. Oppure abbiamo giurisdizioni competenti nell'adozione minorile internazionale e nell'esportamento, rapimento illecito dei minori. Oppure per i tribunali specializzati abbiamo la mappa nell'inquinamento marittimo, c'è per esempio Marsiglia, Brest e Le Havre, 3 in Francia, oppure per tribunali specializzati della pubblica sanità c'è Parigi e Marsiglia, ci sono soltanto 2. Ma anche in altri ambiti, giurisdizioni per conoscere le azioni in termini di proprietà intellettuale, di applicazione delle pene, di commercio specializzata e ancora 9 altri tipi di specializzazione. Dunque c'è una cosa molto importante in Francia, queste giurisdizioni con competenze molto importanti. Vorrei parlare prima dello sviluppo delle nuove modalità di accesso alla giustizia. Qualche parole su prima la Maison de Justice et du Droit, letteralmente le case di giustizia e legge. In un primo tempo queste Maison de Justice erano impostate in zone urbane, sensibili o in quartieri lontani dalle giurisdizioni ed assicuravano una presenza giudiziaria di prossimità. Sono principalmente orientato verso un migliore accesso alla legge, all'aiuto delle vittime e alla prevenzione della delinquenza. Sono 137 in Francia metropolitana. Un altro punto sul rinforzo dei servizi d'accoglienza di cittadini. Si possono notare degli sforzi per migliorare l'informazione date alle persone che si presentano in tribunale, in particolare anche se rilevano di una giurisdizione diversa di quella dove andate la persona. Parlo rapidamente dell'e-giustizia, il sito justice.fr. Una politica è attualmente sviluppata per favorire l'accesso telematico dei cittadini. Justice.fr è un portale unico. Il sito è destinato ad evolvere per permettere di seguire in tempo reale il progetto del proprio caso online. Parliamo dunque, perché il tempo va, del termine attuale del dibattito in Francia. Primo punto, la riforma della Carta delle giurisdizioni e l'organizzazione amministrativa della giustizia. La mappa dopo. L'organizzazione di un budget e bilancio preventivo è il fondamento dell'organizzazione amministrativa della giustizia in Francia. Il bilancio della giustizia in Francia si basa su 10 regioni amministrative, dette BOP, Budget Opérationnel de Programme. Non esiste nessuna concordanza tra le zone di competenza giudiziaria e queste zone di gestione del bilancio. Una BOP raggruppa più coltelli di appello e degli organi apposti riuniscono i capi delle corti di corti comprese in una stessa zona di gestione. Per esempio, per il BOP di Pau dipende di Bordeaux, dove ci sono anche i corti d'appello di Limoges e il corti d'appello di Poitiers. Dunque ci sono soltanto 10 BOP per la Francia. Questa procedura di concentrazione è pesante e molto complessa. Abbiamo anche altri servizi del Ministero della Giustizia, come per esempio queste per la direzione. No, non è un...
Non è colpa nostra,
sì, vado. Abbiamo anche altri servizi del Ministero della Giustizia, come l'amministrazione penitenziaria, sono organizzati in interregioni specifiche. Dunque è molto difficile. Abbiamo il BOP, abbiamo l'amministrazione penitenziaria, abbiamo anche per esempio la direzione della protezione giudiziaria della gioventù, che si occupa del minorenni, e che abbiamo anche un'altra carta. Poi abbiamo anche il segretario generale del Ministero della Giustizia, che si occupa dei bisogni materiali dell'amministrazione, si appoggia su 9 piattaforme interregionali. Dunque, solo la carta geografica delle corti di appello è diversa, ma sono proposte delle modifiche delle competenze territoriali. Da noi abbiamo avuto una riforma importante dello Stato. Oggi abbiamo un nuovo ritaglio della Francia in soltanto 12 regioni metropolitane. Per diverse ragioni, in particolare a causa dei legami tra procura e le altre istituzioni, un'armonizzazione della carta geografica delle corti di appello con quella delle regioni è oggi discussa. Era il progetto del candidato Macron, diventato Presidente della Repubblica, propongono di ricostruire l'organizzazione territoriale della giustizia come segue. I limiti territoriali delle corti di appello devono essere identici a quelli delle regioni, evitando che si diventino le competenze territoriali delle corti di appello su 2 o 3 regioni. Questo è una riforma, un progetto di riforma molto importante in corso di discussione. Posso parlare di altro progetto, no. Ma è già molto difficile. Vorrei semplicemente dire che il sistema giudiziario francese è cambiato radicalmente, ma nel prossimo futuro potremo apportare anche nuovi cambiamenti. Grazie. Mi scuso per il mio italiano, è un po' brutto.
Scusa tu noi, nel senso che c'è stato questo problema tecnico che però non dipende da me o da te, è stato proprio un problema fisico di cavo che adesso cercheremo di risolvere prima di dare la parola a Isabel. Una domanda per il collega Gilles a comando, c'è una curiosità specifica sulla Francia? Prego Walter.
Sì, grazie, spero che non mi sia sfuggito un particolare. Mi chiedo, queste riforme importanti in Francia, molto strutturali, in che misura hanno generato degli effetti sulla domanda? Cioè le sopravvenienze sono diminuite o sono aumentate? E se sono diminuite, a che cosa è riportabile questo? Forse ad una maggiore distanza del giudice dal cittadino?
Sì, prego, ci mancherebbe. Si dice il suo nome anche così, visto che...
Io sono Duso, sono un avvocato, sono il presidente dell'ordine di Biella, il batonier di Biella. Scusi, volevo chiederle questo, proprio una mia ignoranza. Il concetto di dipartimento in Francia, quindi c'è una coincidenza tra dipartimento e tribunale, mi pare di capire, come ambito territoriale. Ecco, il concetto di dipartimento equivale un po' a quello che in Italia sono le province, così? Sì. Ecco. Ok, quindi prima diciamo la riforma ha fatto coincidere i giudici di primo grado con l'ambito territoriale delle province, è così? Mentre sì. Prima c'era un giudice di prima istanza che aveva un ambito territoriale più ristretto rispetto al dipartimento, ho capito bene? Sì. Grazie molte, perché è una domanda che ha rilevanza rispetto al dibattito che c'è stato in Italia, in quanto il Parlamento ad un certo punto ha stabilito che non potessero essere soppressi i tribunali siti nel capoluogo di provincia, mentre invece questo criterio, sulla base di una valutazione di una commissione, che è stato considerato come quasi come dire una bestemmia far coincidere era per questo quindi che volevo capire, perché è assolutamente interessante anche per noi, per il dibattito che c'è in Italia. Grazie.
Sì. Allora vorrei dire che c'è il minimo uno tribunale per il dipartimento, ma oggi ancora abbiamo dipartimenti con 2 o 3 tribunali, e dunque c'è un progetto oggi di andare verso soltanto un unico tribunale per il dipartimento, ma c'è un progetto. L'ho detto, con la riforma del 2100 ci sono 23 tribunali che sono sopprimati. Non abbiamo informazioni su se la domanda è meno o più importante. non è una cosa che abbiamo misurato.
Okay. Ringraziamo Sheila Comandò, grazie tanto G. Facciamo un attimo di pausa.
Abbiamo bisogno di intervenire.
Sì. Ok.
Però stiamo qua.
Sì, stiamo qua. Sì, 2 minuti che intervengono sul proiettore che non riesce più a collegarsi con il PC. Nel frattempo cerchiamo di avviare la presentazione di Isabel. 2 minuti di pazienza per questo inconveniente tecnico. State lì, insomma, non andate via come direbbero in televisione. Grazie.
Restate con noi.
Okay.
Siamo collegati in diretta dalla sede del CNF, stiamo trasmettendo, lo ricordo ancora una volta, le riforme della geografia giudiziaria in Europa. Che vi saluta è Andrea Pontecorvo insieme a Milena Miranda. In questo momento stiamo attendendo l'ultimo relatore della sessione mattutina, la dottoressa Isabelle Dupré, consulente strategico sulle riforme Consiglio delle Corti e dei tribunali in Belgio. Stanno risolvendo dei problemi tecnici a livello di presentazione di slide, quindi da qui a pochi secondi riprenderemo la normale diretta che ormai da 2 ore e mezza ci impegna come Uslow Web Radio. Quest'oggi anche come web tv, perché fra poche ore, giusto il tempo di elaborare il file, saremo pronti anche per
allora riprendiamo i lavori. Ce l'hanno già fatto, è stato molto rapido, più rapido del previsto, grazie.
E
do la parola
riprendiamo i lavori in diretta dalla sede amministrativa del CNF, le riforme della geografia giudiziaria in Europa, convegno internazionale in Roma, quest'oggi 15 giugno 2017.
Portare avanti una serie di riforme che anche in Belgio ai loro sono assolutamente necessarie. Mi ha chiesto anche cortesemente di segnalarvi che la relazione che avete, o meglio le copie delle slides che vi sono state consegnate, non è proprio l'ultimissima versione, quindi potreste vedere delle differenze, ma tutto sommato marginali, rispetto a quello che Isabel proietterà e quello che avete fra i vostri documenti. Isabel, prego.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you for the organization, for inviting me and giving me the possibility to explain the situation in Belgium, which is much similar to what the other countries. It's a mix. As all things in Belgium, it's a mix of several elements, you will see. First of all, a little word about our Belgian Board of Courts. It's a new institution. It has been created in 2014 with a specific mission to take over the administration of the courts. So all the budget will transfer from the Minister of Justice and his administration to the Board of Courts. But we are still in the implementation process, so till now we do not manage. We only negotiate with the minister how to implement it. And I can only say, Mr. President, that a good negotiation between two parties, it needs a proposition of the two parties. So I think the work of your Consiglio is very important if you want to negotiate on the same level with the political class. Only a little. A quick overview. I will start with a very brief presentation of Belgium. We are a small, beautiful, but rather complex country full of contradictions. First of all, we are small. We have 11 million inhabitants, and we are a bit growing, but we are also aging. We have a very severe problem of aging. Secondly, we are a small country, but with a very complex structure, organization. We have a state level, but we also have 4 regions: Flanders, Wallonia, German region and Brussels region. We have 10 provinces and we have about 600 municipalities. Socio-economical, we are a country with we are a welfared country, but we are a country of small enterprises, and we are a country of delivering services. So our industry, our agriculture is limited. But we also know a rather high poverty rate, and we also know the problem of the traffic. Just to explain you, because all these elements, it also plays an important role in the way of the design of our judicial map, as you know. For the legal interested under us, you can find all the regulation in the Constitution, very important, and in our Judicial Code of 1967. And some royal decrees. But important, there is really a basic in the Constitution and in legal acts. So our organization is rather well protected on the legal level. The map today. I will start with the map today. It's rather similar to the French system because we inherited it when Belgium was created. So we have 5 territorial levels, beginning with the smallest, canton. I used our own terminology because it's sometimes difficult for the traduction. And then we have the arrondissementen, the districts, I think is the correct translation. We have also a level on province level, but limited. We have rechtsgebied. I didn't find the traduction. And we have the state level. And we have 10 different types of court. 8, I would say, permanent courts. The Court of Assize and the District Court are not permanent courts. And we start at the bottom with the Justice of the Peace Court, then the Police Court. Police Court treats traffic cases. And traffic cases are important in our country because we have a lot of traffic in our country. Just to say you that specialization is often linked with the local situation. Then we have in first instance courts, labor courts and commercial courts. And on the level of appeal, we have a distinction between Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal takes notice of the cases coming from first instance and commercial courts. And we have the Labor Court of Appeal taking into account the cases coming from the Labor Court. And then we have our Supreme Court, Cour de Cassation. Just some key data on our courts. We have a budget of about 550 million euros without ICT, building, our own board, training and so on. And we have a staff of about 1,600 judges. Judges in the courts, so not the public prosecutor's office. Just for saying that for our budget, almost 80% is used to pay staff, judges and court staff. And that in the rate within the staff, 70% goes to 75% is court staff and technical staff, and 25% are judges. So that's a bit the dimension in our country. You can see, if you see the number of cases, the evolution, that we are doing rather well, 2015, because new entry about 800,000 cases, and output more than 1 million. So we have what they call a positive turnover rate. So delay is going down, but I can't really say that the time for treatment is shortening. Not yet. A short overview. Here you have our Supreme Court, Courts of Appeal, Labor Courts of Appeal, Courts of First Instance. arrondissement. You see different numbers. I will explain that with the recent reform, but it's important. We have commercial courts. We have 9 commercial courts. And you see Brussels, Eupen, which is linked to our organization of the state. We have labor courts. I will not enter into details, but you have the cards, police courts, and all our justice of the peace courts, as you see, 187. Public prosecutor's office, which is important. Till the recent reform, and it was in 2013, there was a symmetry in the organization, the territorial organization of the courts and the public prosecutor's office. There is also a symmetry, partially, in the specialization. As you can see, we have a public prosecutor's office in first instance, and it is competent for the cases, the criminal cases treated by the police courts and the first instance courts. And next to it, we have a labor auditor's office, competent for treating the cases coming before the labor court. But at the level of appeal, there we have the two merged. The name is a combination of the two, thus we have a public prosecutor's office and labor's auditor's office, but it's one office. So on that level, they have merged the two instances, not on the level of first instance. It's too delicate for the moment. And then we have a specific public prosecutor's office, the federal public prosecutor's office, which was created to treat criminal offenses on state level. So it was created for a better coordination of criminal cases who had state level impact. As you can see, 5 on the level of the courts, 9, so the same organization, first instance, for the labor auditor's office with the labor courts, and the first instance public prosecutor's office, the symmetry with the first instance courts. Only one slight difference, we have 14, one more, because, and I recognize the example in Dutch, they have created one office in an arrondissement, and they have created 2 seats because the arrondissement was too large. Just to give you, and I think it's common to all presentations here, a short, to show you the evolution. 1831, creation of Belgium, we took over the French organization. It lasted till 1967, when we have our new judicial code, and then there was an opportunity to create, for the first time, a unified district court come in the Netherlands. So where one court for civil, commercial, labor cases. But it wasn't a success, so it didn't reach the final state of political decision. On the contrary, they created a new specialized court, the labor courts. So it was multiple types of courts. And then, 2000, redesign of the cantons because of the borders of the municipalities who were changed. A federal public prosecution office, abolition of our military courts in peacetime, and also creation of a new execution punishment court. So I can resume telling you that there were created more types of court, more specialization. Specialization is a new type of court. That was a bit the reasonement. But in 2014, we suddenly had 3 reforms entered into phase in 2014. So without any transition, there you are. Take your plan. Do what you can with it. That's a bit we had, if you go to Belgium and you want to show off and show people that you know something about the politics in Belgium, you have to mention the magical word BHV. Do you know BHV? Brussels, Halle, Vilvoorde. It has been a big issue for years, a political issue of a region, Dutch, French, in the election system. And after the Constitutional Court has expressed himself on that issue, they were forced to split it. And because of that split, we also had to split the courts in that region. And that explains, for a part, some particularities in our judicial map. So BHV, do not forget. We have a new specialized court, family and juvenile court, and then we have the reform of 2013, which I will explain a little bit more, which was based on an enlargement of scale. But we are not ready yet. Now it are the justice of the peace courts again who are targeted, who they want to redesign the map by the prorogation of a number of justice of the peace courts. But there, what is interesting, they invented a new concept, sous l'arbre, under the tree. So, what does that mean? As you know, justice of the peace courts, it's very local, it's very sensible, it's very proximative to the people. And our minister has found a solution telling that, okay, we will prorogate some justice of the peace courts, but the judges can sit wherever they want, under the tree, to speak justice. If they find some building or even under the tree, they can go to that location and speak justice. So that was a bit a Belgian compromise. It's perhaps interesting as idea. So, as you see, the same reasons, the same criteria, specialization, the administrative organization, accessibility, efficiency. That's the new key word. That's the new key word for reforming, redesigning the judicial map. What does it tell? It tells do more, better, with less. That's what they want. So that's how I come, and you see the different criteria. Not always with data, but that's where the criteria used: population, distance, the reforms of administrative institutions, workload, type of cases, and, of course, scale of means. So I come to you with the last reform, and it is an interesting reform because it combines different goals, different objectives. The goals at the left, management and efficiency, whatever it means, because it are container terms. Less delay, faster proceedings, don't we want that all? Quality, accessibility, service. That were the political goals. But what was interesting is that this act did a reform on two levels, scaling up the territories, but also enforcing the mobility and specialization. So it was a combination of two. And before all things, this law was absolutely necessary to take another law, a law I will mention further on, a law of 18 February 2014 on the judicial management autonomy. So what I talked to you in the beginning, that was linked to this law. So scaling up was absolutely necessary for introducing the judicial management. Why? Because there were too many entities, too many courts, two different scales. So they had to raise up. Scaling up, so we went, first of all, territorial. We went from 27 to 12 arrondissements. What was the criteria? The province. So it went to the level of the province. So we have 10 provinces, but we have also the exceptional organization of our state. So we had two more for Brussels and for Eupen. What is Eupen? Eupen is the German region. So you see always the things, they are combined. Our labor and commerce courts, first instance, were put up to the level of the resort, the rechtsgebied. So they were put on the same geographical level as our courts. It's very big. Why? Because they were very small, and now they are less small, but they are still small. So, and what was also interesting, perhaps for your debate, did we really abolish courts? No. We created bigger arrondissements, but all the old courts were maintained as divisions inside a bigger arrondissement. So we didn't have the issue of the buildings because they stayed in the buildings. We didn't have the issue of the ICT because they used the same ICT. So again, I think a beautiful example of Belgian compromis. They also introduced a new system, and it's perhaps also interesting that by royal decree, but a royal decree who has to pass by the Council of Ministers, there is a possibility to scale up the divisions. And it's linked to another systematic of a possibility to regroup cases of a certain specialization within a division. I will say some more. So, visual, 27, 12. 27 labor and commerce, 9. Dus 4 rechtsgebied, Brussels, Eupen, coming always back, come special regions. And many, many, many divisions. 13 courts of first instance, 23 divisions. So finally, we still have 28 locations, because you have to count them together with the main seats. Commercial courts, 9 courts. Well done. No. 24 divisions, 29 locations. So you see, it's really... So, effect on the lawyers, nihil. They stayed organized as they stayed. Labor courts, 9, 31, 35. Police courts, 15 courts, 33 divisions, 37 locations. So, second aspect of that act, mobility and specialization. And then I have to be clear on the word mobility. I heard it also in the questions. We have, first of all, the mobility inside the court. There it is the president who decides which judge goes to which division and which section. There's no doubt about it. But there is also a mobility between courts. And then we make a distinction if it are courts of the same type. For example, first instance, they have been very creative because they have put in a system that judges have a nomination, a principal nomination in one specific court. First instance, Ghent. But in the meantime, they are also, in an accessory way, nominated for all the courts of first instance, for all the other arrondissements in the same resort. What is the advantage of that? That you can move those judges without their consent. So, they did the same with the justice of the peace, but within the arrondissement. But there is also a possibility of mobility between courts of different types. First instance and labor, first instance and commerce. There the consent is still needed, the consent of the judge. And some good lobbyists, some courts, specialized courts, have put a barrier between them and the other courts. This mobility is also possible between first instance and Court of Appeal. So, but it's a mobility restricted because it only gives you the possibility to move judges from one court to another for a temporary mission. Just temporary missions. So if there is a delay or an absence and so on. So it's very limited. And that also, we had the same reasonment for the court staff, was also combined with this Rule of Court Act, this new system, of 186 Judicial Code. Namely, as I told you, we had the big arrondissements but with all the divisions. But there is a possibility now to centralize some type of cases into one division inside the arrondissement. So they combined different goals such a way. It's a royal decree, very heavy procedure, and the law itself quoted that it is only possible for some type of cases. So it's defined in the law. And what were the criteria? It are cases who are very specialized, little cases, so you have to regroup, and persons, those parties didn't have to appear in person. That were the criteria. As I said, this was the preliminary for a big reform, namely the reform on management autonomy. Just in 2 slides, because we can give a presentation on that also, what will be the system. The Minister of Justice concludes a management agreement for 3 years with the board of the courts, one side, and the board of the public prosecutor's office. So it has 2 management agreements. So we are split. It's a dual system. And what's in it? The organizational targets. You have to produce 1 million of cases, and the means he gives for it. And targets, also qualitative. For example, you have to produce inside 1 year. You have to finish a case inside 1 year between introduction and outcome. Our board then redistribute the means between the courts. Not 244 courts we still have, if you count the justice of the peace, but the 244 courts have been regrouped in directie committees, boards, own board. They have created their own boards, and the courts of first instance appeal, it's a similarity between the board and the court. One exception, the justice of the peace courts and the police courts were put together for their boards. So they are not 187 boards of the justice of the peace, but they are put together, merged with the police of the courts. And that's why we still have 49 boards. Okay. So that's what we hope to have in the future, not a budget-driven system. So we have 700 million for the courts and produce, but we hope to go into a system that is target-driven, so that we as board with our courts can define what we can produce and what the means are we need. So the word need is really fundamental. We want to have a link in the future between the needs we have to produce for a good quality and the budget we receive. As you see, difficult implementation, all the red is still in negotiation with the minister. Assessment. First of all, I will be very short. There is no real assessment because it's very recent. But what we see today, we have still too many entities. If you take the link with the management, efficiency and other, we are still 49 boards with a very, very different scale. We still have courts with 10 judges and we have courts with 150 judges. And the 49 boards are now put on the same level for the distribution of money. What gives as a result that we already are thinking about alternatives, creating new management levels, or again, creating a unified court of first instance. And we are very jealous when we look at the Netherlands, where they have done it without losing the specialization, and it's possible. Some numbers, you will find it in the slides for the difference in scales. Conclusions, as I told, a wide range of goals, reasons, criteria. We had long time a standstill. But the last years there was an acceleration, and as I said, the buzzword is efficiency. But most of all, and I will end with that, we have a problem of evaluation because we have no good data. We have no reliable data. I cannot say if mobility is a success because I don't know how much it is used. We don't have those data. The reform, we have the 12 arrondissements, we have the new courts, but I cannot say now what is the impact on the workload. I cannot say. I can a little bit say, but I cannot say it in public because the data are not validated. That's why, and perhaps, Mr. President, it can be a project for your Consiglio in the years to come. That's why we now have invested in a strategy for business intelligence for justice. Business intelligence, it's a big word, but it's all the chain of where are the data on the production, and that's the upper scale. We have the distinction between the primary processes, it's the judicial proceedings and the number of affairs, and we have the secondary processes. It's the process of HRM, the personnel, the financial, and other. We only today have some data on the primary process. We do not have, as board, any reliable data on the secondary process. What gives us a problem? Because they want us to take over that. And if you don't have good data or tooling or monitoring, it's a bit difficult. Then you take over something which isn't working well. And how can we then make sure that it works well? So that's a big issue. And as you see, it's the different phases. First phase, the business phase, is where the data are put in the information systems, in databases and so on. There we have to work on quality. That are the transactional systems, retaining the data. Then there is the phase of the collection of data. We have a number of statistic analysts in our board, but they do analytics for a small part. They do a lot of IT, so they not really can do analytic works, and that's because of the function of our IT. And that's the management level, namely the boards of the boards of courts and the boards of on local level. They need those data to take decisions, to evaluate, to report. So as you see, there is a lot of problems and a lot of lack, and we hope to end in a couple of years in a complete scheme with a data warehouse, a BICC, well organized, and with data for the primary and the secondary process, so that I can give you a real evaluation of our reforms. I thank you for your attention.
Se c'è una domanda o due rispetto al Belgio, prego Walter. Qualcun altro? Prego.
Allora, ancora Walter Pompeo per chiedere se esiste un tempo minimo in Belgio di permanenza del magistrato presso l'ufficio a cui è assegnato e quanto tempo di norma o per prassi intercorre tra il trasferimento del magistrato e l'arrivo del nuovo magistrato in sostituzione. Grazie.
First one. Okay. A judge receives a nomination at life. So when he becomes nominated judge at court first instance Ghent, and he doesn't want to move, he stays there till the end of his life. Second, that's why they have scaled up the region, because if you only can move him with his consent, but on scaling up the territory in which he is nominated, you can attenuate the need of consent. How long does it take before a new judge is put into place? It was very simple. You had a judge who was going to go away, and you knew it. Then you published the place. Now it's so that he could arrive at time, the new judge. Now it's a bit more difficult because the Minister of Justice has put in a system for regrouping the publication of open places 2 times a year. So 2 times a year they reassemble all the open places and the places they could foresee, and then they launch it. And taking into consideration that it takes 6 till 9 months for a nomination of a judge, you can see the gaps, and you can also see the reason of that measurement. Again, money, because then if they publish in September, it only counts for the budget of the year after. So we have a problem, but the continuity of the office concerns.
Sì, io non so come ringraziare per questa mattinata, a mio parere di estremo interesse, che ci darà modo, soprattutto come osservatorio, di sviluppare, e soprattutto voi come grandi ricercatori dell'IRSIG, di sviluppare tutta una serie di considerazioni. In qualche momento credo che anche voi vi siate sentiti in un altro mondo per riferimenti a fatti, azioni, circostanze completamente diverse da quelle che caratterizzano il nostro sistema giustizia, non in bene o in male, è proprio un tipo di organizzazione, e devo dire anche alcuni spunti che secondo me potrebbero essere opportuno oggetto di grande speculazione anche nel nostro interesse. Magari per una volta potremmo fare quello che ci dice l'Europa in modo più furbo e non in modo più prono davanti all'autorità. Programma: adesso c'è un piccolo pranzo che è stato predisposto in biblioteca. L'idea è di ripartire alle ore 15 con una tavola rotonda che avrò l'ardire di moderare, che non ci occuperà oltre le 16:30. Avete letto di cosa si parlerà un po' più genericamente dei nostri problemi. Raccomanderei a tutti, per evitare ulteriori confusioni, di tenere con voi l'apparecchio per le traduzioni, perché altrimenti lo dovete riconsegnare. Vi devono dare il documento di identità, poi dovete riconsegnare il documento, eventualmente il documento di identità, tenendo solo presente una cosa, che oggi si parla in italiano e quindi sono i nostri colleghi relatori che avranno bisogno invece dell'apparecchiatura per poter capire quello che cercheremo loro di dire. Come volete. Grazie.
E termina così la sessione mattutina delle riforme della geografia giudiziaria in Europa. Chi vi saluta dalla piattaforma provvisoria e portatile in CNF della sede amministrativa è Andrea Pontecorvo, unitamente, come già vi avevo detto prima, a Milena Miranda. Milena.
Sì, abbiamo ascoltato un po' tutti questi relatori di altri paesi. Abbiamo visto che l'unica nota comune, perlomeno da quanto ci hanno riferito, è che le riforme a costo zero non si possono fare. E adesso salutiamo naturalmente gli ascoltatori per riprendere poi alle 15.
Esattamente, e tra l'altro, anzi, te già vedo che stai correndo per prendere delle interviste proprio in presa diretta dai relatori che abbiamo sentito. Ci risentiamo alle 15 per la tavola rotonda, le prospettive di riforma in Italia alla luce delle esperienze europee. Modererà l'avvocato Enrico Merli, consigliere del CNF, delegato all'osservatorio. Parteciperanno il dottor Fabio Bartolomeo, direttore direzione generale di statistica del Ministero della Giustizia, la professoressa Paola Balducci, consigliere del Consiglio Superiore della Magistratura, l'avvocato Giuseppe Iacona, consigliere coordinatore commissione CNF sulla geografia giudiziaria, il dottor Davide Carnevali, ricercatore istituto di ricerca sui temi giudiziari, Consiglio Nazionale delle Ricerche. Ci tengo a ricordare che con il dottor Davide Carnevali abbiamo anche trasmesso da Ostuni, nell'ambito dell'assemblea dei dirigenti di giustizia tenutasi non più di 2 settimane fa, e che ritroverete le tracce sul sito della radio radio www.webradiouslow.it. Ed infine chiuderà la tavola rotonda il professor Stefano Campostrini, ordinario di Statistica Sociale, Università Ca' Foscari, Venezia. Ci risentiamo alle 15, care colleghe, cari colleghi, buon ascolto.
Uslow Web Radio 331 3097 852 www.webradiouslow.it. Ascolta quando vuoi e dove vuoi Uslow Web Radio, la radio per gli avvocati fatta da avvocati. Scarica la nostra app per Apple e Android. Tutti i giorni.